I opened my front door to find a police officer standing on my porch, and the first words out of his mouth were that my daughter-in-law had called to report me as mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Please come inside, officer. There's something you need to see." And I walked him directly to my laptop, where weeks of security footage were waiting to tell the real story. My name is Margaret. I'm 62 years old, and I never imagined my life would come to this moment. Standing in my own living room with a uniformed officer while my hands trembled as I pulled up files that would either vindicate me or destroy what remained of my family. The rain outside matched the storm that had been brewing in my life for the past 6 months, ever since my son David married Cassandra, a woman I tried so hard to welcome into our family, a woman who smiled to my face while systematically working to isolate me from my only child. It started small, the way poison always does. Little comments Cassandra would make about how I was too involved in David's life, how I needed to give them space, how my traditions were outdated and my advice unwelcome. I backed off because I loved my son and wanted his marriage to succeed. I stopped calling as often, stopped dropping by with his favorite meals, stopped suggesting family dinners on Sundays like we'd done for 30 years. But it wasn't enough for her. Nothing I did was ever enough. And the distance between David and me grew wider with each passing week, until I barely recognized the son who used to call me every day just to hear my voice. The real trouble began 3 months ago, when my husband Robert died suddenly of a heart attack. David was devastated. We both were, and for a brief moment I thought grief might bring us back together, that Cassandra would show some compassion and let my son comfort his grieving mother. Instead, she saw an opportunity, and she took it with both hands, wrapping them around my throat and squeezing until I could barely breathe. If you're listening to this and feeling moved by what you're hearing, I'd be so grateful if you'd click that subscribe button and help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything, and it lets me know these stories matter to you. Just hit that red button. It only takes a second, and you'll be part of this growing community. Robert left me the house. It was paid off years ago, and he also left a substantial life insurance policy that would allow me to live comfortably for the rest of my days. Cassandra knew about the money. David must have told her, and suddenly she was very interested in my well-being. She started coming by the house alone, without David, always with suggestions about how I should handle my finances, how I should consider selling the house because it was too big for one person, how I should think about moving into a retirement community where I'd have people my own age around me. I told her politely that I wasn't ready to make any major decisions, that I needed time to grieve and figure out what came next. She smiled that cold smile of hers and said, "Of course, take all the time you need, Margaret," but her eyes told a different story. Her eyes were calculating, measuring, pricing out everything in my home like she was already planning the estate sale. Then the incident started happening. Small things at first, things I might have dismissed as accidents or my own forgetfulness if they hadn't kept escalating. I'd find my medication bottles move from where I always kept them, labels facing backwards, pills scattered on the bathroom counter. My car keys would disappear for days, only to turn up in bizarre places, once in the refrigerator, another time in the garden shed. Important documents went missing from my desk, financial papers, insurance forms, Robert's will. I started to feel like I was losing my mind, questioning my own memory, wondering if grief had affected me more than I realized. That's exactly what Cassandra wanted. I understand that now. She was gaslighting me, a term I learned from my neighbor's daughter who's a therapist. She was creating a narrative of mental decline, planting seeds of doubt in David's mind about my competence, my ability to care for myself, my fitness to make decisions about my own life and property. David started making comments when he called, which was less and less frequent. He'd ask if I was remembering to take my medications, if I was eating properly, if I was feeling confused or disoriented. I could hear Cassandra's voice behind his words, her concerns delivered through his mouth, and my heart broke a little more each time, because my son was believing her lies over his own knowledge of who I was. I knew I needed proof, something concrete that would show David what was really happening. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed security cameras throughout my house, 4 of them, covering the front door, the living room, the kitchen, and the hallway leading to the bedrooms. The company that installed them showed me how to access the footage from my laptop, how to save important clips, how to share files if I ever needed to. I felt guilty doing it, like I was violating some unspoken rule of family trust, but my gut told me I was running out of time. The cameras caught everything. Within the first week, I had footage of Cassandra letting herself into my house with a key I never gave her. She must have taken David's copy or had one made. The video showed her moving through my home like she owned it, opening drawers, reading papers on my desk, going through my medicine cabinet. She'd rearrange things just slightly, enough to make me doubt myself, but not enough to be obvious. She took photos of my medications with her phone. She sorted through my mail, and once I watched footage of her standing in my bedroom, just standing there looking around with an expression of such cold calculation that it made my blood run cold. Your subscription would mean the world to me right now. We're building something special here, a community that believes in truth and justice, and we're so close to hitting that 1,000 subscriber milestone. Please click subscribe and be part of this journey with me. But the most damning footage came 2 weeks ago. Cassandra arrived at my house in the middle of the afternoon. I was out having lunch with an old friend, one of the few social connections I'd maintained through everything. The cameras showed her entering with her key, going straight to my medicine cabinet, and then doing something that made my stomach turn when I watched it later. She opened several of my prescription bottles and mixed the pills together, putting blood pressure medication in with my thyroid pills, putting sleeping pills in with my morning vitamins. She was deliberately trying to confuse me, potentially trying to make me sick by taking the wrong medications at the wrong times. Then she went to my desk and took several financial documents, including a power of attorney form my lawyer had sent me to review. She photographed everything with her phone before returning them to the wrong folders. The whole visit lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it was captured in perfect clarity, her face visible in every frame, her intentions impossible to deny. I made copies of everything, backed them up in 3 different places, and sent a set to my lawyer. I was preparing to confront David with the evidence when Cassandra made her move. She called him at work one morning. I know because he told me later, crying and saying she was worried about me, that she'd stopped by to check on me and found the house in disarray, that I'd seemed confused and agitated, that I'd accused her of terrible things, and she was genuinely concerned for my safety and the safety of others. David came by that evening, his face full of concern and pity, and I knew Cassandra had poisoned him thoroughly. He suggested gently that maybe I should see a doctor, maybe talk to someone about how I was coping with Dad's death. He said Cassandra had told him about my accusations, and he was worried I was becoming paranoid, seeing threats where none existed. When I tried to tell him about the cameras, about what I'd recorded, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind, like his worst fears were being confirmed. That's when I realized Cassandra had played this perfectly. If I showed him the footage and he didn't believe me, if he thought I was so far gone that I was fabricating evidence or misinterpreting innocent actions, then everything she'd been building toward would fall into place. She could have me declared incompetent, could push for guardianship or conservatorship, could get control of my money and property with David's full support and blessing, all while pretending to care about my well-being. So I held back. I didn't show him the footage that night. Instead, I told him I was fine, that maybe I had been a bit stressed, that I'd make an appointment with my doctor if it would make him feel better. He seemed relieved, hugged me tight, and promised to check on me more often. After he left, I sat in the dark for hours, trying to figure out my next move, knowing I was in a race against time. The next day, Cassandra escalated. She called Adult Protective Services and filed a report claiming I was neglecting myself, that my house was in poor condition, that I was confused, and possibly a danger to myself. A social worker showed up unannounced to do a wellness check. Thankfully, my house was spotless. I've always kept a clean home, and I was coherent and calm when I answered her questions. She seemed satisfied that I was fine, but the report would remain on file, one more piece of Cassandra's narrative that I was declining mentally. Then came the police visit, the one that brought everything to this moment. Cassandra had called them claiming I'd made threats, that I'd become unstable and aggressive, that she was afraid for her safety. She'd cried on the phone, I'm sure, played the terrified daughter-in-law worried about her husband's mentally ill mother. And because she'd already established this pattern with David, with Adult Protective Services, her claims had weight. So there I stood with Officer Martinez, a kind-faced man in his 40s who looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, and I told him there was something he needed to see. I pulled up the first video, the one showing Cassandra entering my house without permission, and I watched his expression change from professional concern to focused attention. Then I showed him the footage of her mixing my medications, and his jaw tightened. By the time I showed him the third and fourth videos, documenting weeks of unauthorized entries and deliberate sabotage, he was making notes and asking me to send him copies of everything. If you're finding value in this story, please help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button. It's free. It takes just a moment, and it helps stories like mine reach people who need to hear them. We're in this together. Officer Martinez asked if I wanted to press charges. I thought about it, really considered what that would mean for David, for what remained of my family. But I knew that if I didn't act now, if I didn't use this evidence while it was fresh and documented, Cassandra would continue her campaign until she'd successfully isolated me completely, or worse. So I said yes. I wanted to press charges for breaking and entering, for theft of my house key, for tampering with my medications, for whatever else the law would allow. He called for another officer to come take my statement properly, and within an hour, my quiet house was a crime scene of sorts. Police documenting everything, taking copies of my security footage, photographing my medicine cabinet, and the mixing of pills that Cassandra had done. They asked if I felt safe, if I wanted to stay somewhere else for a few days, but I refused to be driven from my own home. This was Robert's and my house, the place we'd built our life together, raised our son, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. Then came the hardest part. Officer Martinez said they'd need to contact David as part of the investigation since Cassandra was his wife, and the crimes had been committed against his mother. I asked if I could be the one to tell him, if they could give me a few hours before they showed up at his door with official questions and potential charges against his wife. Martinez looked at his partner, and they agreed to give me until the next morning. I called David that night, my hands shaking so badly I almost couldn't dial. When he answered, I could hear Cassandra in the background, probably listening to every word, and I knew I had to be careful. I told him I needed to see him right away, that it was urgent, and that he needed to come alone. He started to protest, saying Cassandra would want to come too, and I said firmly that if he couldn't come alone, then we could have this conversation at the police station in the morning, because that's where it was heading regardless. The silence on the other end told me I'd shocked him. He said he'd be there in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. I paced my living room, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain this without sounding like the paranoid old woman Cassandra had tried to paint me as. I pulled up the videos on my laptop, had them ready to play, and prayed that my son would believe his own eyes over his wife's lies. David arrived looking worried and frustrated, probably prepared to defend Cassandra against whatever accusations his unstable mother was about to make. But when he walked in and saw my face, really saw it, some of that defensiveness faded. I asked him to sit down, told him I loved him, and that nothing I was about to show him was designed to hurt him, but that he needed to see the truth about what had been happening in my home. Then I played the videos, all of them, chronologically, so he could see the pattern developing over weeks. I watched my son's face as he watched his wife systematically invading his mother's privacy, tampering with medications, staging scenarios designed to make me look incompetent. His expression went from skeptical to confused to horrified, and by the time the last video finished, tears were streaming down his face. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support by clicking that subscribe button would mean everything. You're helping these important stories reach the people who need them most. Please take that step with us. He asked to see them again, certain segments, as if hoping he'd missed something that would explain away what was so clearly documented. But there was no explaining it away. The timestamps, the clear footage, Cassandra's face visible in every frame, her deliberate actions, there was no room for misinterpretation. My son put his head in his hands and cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a small boy, and my heart broke for him, even as relief washed over me that he believed, that he saw, that I wasn't alone anymore. The questions came then. Why would she do this? How long had I known? Why hadn't I told him sooner? I explained everything, the escalating behavior, my fear that he wouldn't believe me, Cassandra's careful construction of a narrative that made me look unstable, so anything I said would seem like paranoid delusions. I told him about the police report she'd filed that very day, how close she'd come to potentially having me declared incompetent or committed, how the only thing that saved me was having proof that couldn't be denied. David was devastated, but also angry. An anger I recognized from his father, a slow, burning rage at betrayal and injustice. He asked what happened next, and I told him about the charges I'd filed, about the police investigation that would begin in the morning. He nodded slowly, said he understood, said he supported whatever I needed to do. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. What about us? What about our family? I took his hands and told him that he would always be my son, that nothing Cassandra had done could change the love I had for him or the relationship we'd built over 30 years. But I also told him that I couldn't have her in my life, couldn't trust her, couldn't sit at a table with someone who'd tried to destroy me. What he chose to do with his marriage was his decision, but I needed him to understand that there was no path forward that included Cassandra having any access to me or my life. He left shortly after, saying he needed to think, needed to process everything. I didn't sleep that night, just sat watching the rain and wondering what the next day would bring. In the morning, Officer Martinez called to say they were heading to David's house to question Cassandra. I asked him to let me know when it was done, and he promised he would. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was David, his voice flat and exhausted. He said Cassandra had admitted to everything once confronted with the video evidence. She'd broken down, confessed that she'd married him partly for his family's money, that she'd seen his mother as an obstacle to inheriting what she felt they deserved. She'd honestly believed she could have me declared incompetent, could convince David to support a conservatorship, and then she'd have control of everything Robert had left behind. The cold calculation of it stunned me, even though I'd suspected as much. To hear it confirmed, to know that someone had looked at my grief and vulnerability and seen only opportunity, it was almost more than I could process. David said he'd asked her to leave, that their marriage was over, and she'd gone without protest, probably already calculating her next move with a divorce lawyer. Your subscription helps us build a community of people who believe in sharing real stories that matter. Please click subscribe and help us hit that 1,000 subscriber goal. You're part of something meaningful here. The legal process unfolded over the next several months. Cassandra was charged with breaking and entering, theft, and several counts related to tampering with medications. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor, seeing the clear documentation and the vulnerable victim, pushed for meaningful consequences. Eventually, Cassandra pleaded guilty to reduced charges and received probation, community service, and a restraining order keeping her away from me. David's divorce moved forward quickly. Cassandra didn't contest it once she realized there was no money to be gained. He's living in an apartment now, rebuilding his life. And slowly we're rebuilding our relationship too. The damage she caused will take time to fully heal, but we're talking every day again, having Sunday dinners again, and I can see glimpses of my son returning from behind the wall she'd built around him. I've kept the security cameras up. Some people might say that's paranoid, that I should feel safe now with Cassandra legally barred from contacting me. But those cameras gave me back my power when I needed it most. They documented the truth when everyone was ready to believe I was losing my mind, and I won't apologize for protecting myself. Besides, they give me peace of mind. The ability to sleep at night knowing that if anyone ever tries something like this again, I'll have proof. The experience has changed me in ways both good and difficult. I'm more cautious now about who I trust, more aware of how vulnerability can be exploited, more protective of the boundaries I set. But I'm also stronger, more confident in my own perceptions, more willing to fight for myself, even when it would be easier to give in. Robert would be proud of how I handled this, I think. He always said I had steel in my spine when it mattered, and I'd never needed it more than I did these past months. My neighbors, the ones I'd worried might have believed Cassandra's narrative about my mental decline, were incredibly supportive once the truth came out. Several of them had noticed her coming and going from my house at odd times and had thought it was strange but hadn't wanted to intrude. Now they keep a friendly eye out, wave when they see me, occasionally drop by with baked goods or invitations to neighborhood events. It's reminded me that community matters, that isolation is dangerous, and that maintaining connections with people who care is part of taking care of myself. I've also started attending a support group for older adults who've been victims of financial exploitation or elder abuse. Hearing other people's stories has been both heartbreaking and healing. So many of us have experienced family members or supposed caregivers who saw our age or grief or loneliness as an opportunity rather than a call to compassion. We share strategies for protecting ourselves. We celebrate victories when justice is served, and we remind each other that being victimized doesn't make us victims. It makes us survivors. If this story has resonated with you, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. We're working toward that first 1,000 subscribers, and each one represents someone who believes these stories matter. Just click that red button and join us. David has apologized more times than I can count, though I keep telling him he has nothing to apologize for. He didn't know what Cassandra was doing, and he was manipulated just as surely as I was, just in different ways. She played on his love for me, twisted his concern into doubt, used his desire to help into a weapon against us both. Forgiving him has been easy, because there's nothing to forgive. Watching him forgive himself has been harder, but he's working with a therapist and making progress. We've talked about the red flags he missed, the warning signs that might have told him something was wrong if he'd been looking for them. Cassandra's isolating behavior, her constant suggestions that I needed more help than I was getting, her interest in my finances, the way she'd volunteer information about my supposed confusion or forgetfulness. In hindsight, the pattern is obvious, but when you're living through it and trusting the person you married, it's nearly impossible to see. That's what predators like Cassandra count on. That trust and love will blind people to manipulation until it's almost too late. I've had people ask why I didn't just show David the videos immediately, why I waited until after filing the police report. The truth is, I was terrified he wouldn't believe me, that he'd think I'd somehow doctored the footage or misunderstood what I was seeing. Cassandra had done such a thorough job of planting doubt about my mental state that I didn't trust my own son to trust me, and that realization was devastating. By getting the police involved first, by having Officer Martinez see the footage and validate that yes, crimes had been committed, I had an objective authority confirming what my own eyes showed me. It was insurance against the gaslighting continuing even in the face of evidence. The medication tampering was the charge that everyone found most disturbing, even more than the breaking and entering. The prosecutor explained that mixing medications like that, especially for someone my age with multiple prescriptions, could have caused serious health consequences or even death. Whether Cassandra intended to hurt me physically or just wanted to create more evidence of confusion and incompetence, the potential for harm was very real. That's what elevated the charges from simple property crimes to something more serious, and it's what made the judge impose a harsher sentence than Cassandra's lawyer had hoped for. I've thought a lot about what drives someone to do what Cassandra did. Was it pure greed? Or was there something else involved? Some resentment or anger that I never saw? David says she came from a family with money problems, that she'd grown up watching her parents struggle financially, and maybe that created a desperation in her that I couldn't understand. But I've struggled too. Robert and I worked hard for everything we had, and we never thought that entitled us to take from others. At some point, difficult circumstances become an explanation, but not an excuse. And Cassandra crossed that line repeatedly. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Your support helps us share more stories like this one, stories that might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers together. The house feels different now, both safer and lonelier. Safer because I know I'm protected, because I have systems in place and people watching out for me. Lonelier because Robert's absence is still so present, and because the family dinners I imagined with David and his future children have taken on a different shape than I'd hoped. But I'm learning that loneliness is preferable to the slow poison of someone actively working to destroy you. And that real connection, the kind I'm rebuilding with David, is worth more than maintaining appearances of family harmony while abuse happens behind closed doors. I've started volunteering at a senior center, teaching a course on digital literacy and online safety. Part of the curriculum includes information about elder abuse, how to recognize it, how to document it, how to protect yourself legally and financially. I share my story, carefully edited to protect David's privacy but honest about how close I came to losing everything. The participants are engaged and grateful, many of them admitting they've experienced similar situations or worried about becoming vulnerable to exploitation. Knowledge is power, and I'm determined to help others avoid what I went through. My lawyer has helped me update my estate planning with stronger protections in place. We've set up trusts that can't be easily manipulated. We've designated multiple parties who would need to agree before any major decisions about my care or finances could be made, and we've created clear documentation of my wishes while I'm still completely competent to express them. It's morbid in some ways, planning for potential incapacity. But it's also empowering to know that if something does happen to me, there are safeguards preventing anyone from taking advantage. David has met someone new, nothing serious yet. But he tells me about her sometimes, and I can hear hope creeping back into his voice. I'm cautious about meeting her, about allowing anyone new into our rebuilt family dynamic. But I'm also aware that David deserves happiness and partnership, and that I can't let Cassandra's betrayal poison my ability to welcome good people into our lives. When the time comes, I'll meet this woman with an open mind and a watching eye, trusting but verified, as the saying goes. The restraining order against Cassandra expires in 2 years, and I've already talked to my lawyer about making it permanent. I don't expect her to come back. She's moved to another state, according to David, started over somewhere where people don't know what she did. But I'm not taking chances, and the law allows for extensions of protective orders when there's ongoing concern about safety. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure she never has the opportunity to hurt me or mine again. Some days I'm angry about the time Cassandra stole from me, the months of second-guessing myself and feeling isolated from my son, the grief she complicated, and the trust she shattered. Other days I'm just grateful it wasn't worse, that I had the presence of mind to install those cameras, that Officer Martinez believed me, that David ultimately saw the truth. I cycle through these feelings, and I'm learning that's okay, that recovery isn't linear, and that both the anger and the gratitude can coexist. If you believe in the power of truth and the importance of sharing stories like this, please subscribe to the channel. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes this work possible. Just one click on that subscribe button, and you're part of this community. The security footage that saved me sits on a hard drive in my safe deposit box now, backed up in multiple locations, a permanent record of what happened. I hope I never need to look at it again, but I'm glad it exists. It's proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't imagining things, wasn't the unstable old woman Cassandra tried to make me appear to be. It's validation of my reality when someone worked very hard to make me doubt that reality, and that matters more than I can easily express. I've reconnected with some old friends who'd drifted away during the period when Cassandra was isolating me from David. We have lunch regularly now. We take walks in the park when weather permits, and we've started a book club that meets twice a month. These connections feed my soul in ways I didn't fully appreciate when I had them before, and I'm more intentional now about nurturing relationships and not taking people for granted. Life is too short and too precious to spend it isolated or surrounded by people who mean us harm. David asked me recently if I could ever imagine trusting a daughter-in-law again, if whoever he might eventually marry would have a chance with me, or if Cassandra had ruined that possibility forever. I told him honestly that I didn't know, that time would tell, but that I wanted to believe people could earn trust through consistent action and genuine care. I don't want to become bitter or closed off. Don't want Cassandra's legacy to be my inability to love new people who come into our family. But I also won't pretend I'm not changed by this, won't apologize for being more careful, and won't ever again ignore my instincts when they tell me something is wrong. The therapist I started seeing after everything happened has helped me process the trauma of being gaslit and nearly destroyed by someone I'd welcomed as family. She's helped me understand that it's normal to have trust issues after something like this, but also that I can work through them without letting them control my life. We talk about boundaries, about self-advocacy, about the difference between being cautious and being paranoid. It's ongoing work, but it's worth it to reclaim my peace of mind and sense of safety in the world. I've thought about reaching out to Cassandra's family, the parents David mentioned who struggled financially, wondering if they know what their daughter did, if they'd even care. But my lawyer advised against it, said there's nothing to be gained and potentially complications to be avoided, so I've left it alone. Sometimes justice is quiet. Sometimes it's just about stopping the harm and rebuilding what was damaged, not about making sure everyone knows the full story. That's been hard for me to accept, but I'm learning. Your subscription would mean so much to me and to everyone who finds value in these stories. We're building toward that 1,000 subscriber milestone together, and you can be part of reaching it by clicking subscribe right now. Thank you for being here. The anniversary of Robert's death came and went last month, the second one without him, and it was both harder and easier than the first. Harder, because I'm more aware now of everything that's happened in the year since he died, all the ways Cassandra used my grief as an opportunity. Easier because David was with me. We spent the day looking through photo albums and telling stories, and I felt my husband's presence in the love between us, in the family bond that survived being nearly destroyed. Robert would have been furious about what Cassandra tried to do, but he'd be proud of how we fought back and found our way back to each other. I still have nightmares sometimes where the police don't believe me, where the cameras malfunctioned and there's no proof, where David sides with Cassandra and I end up in some facility, declared incompetent and stripped of my autonomy. I wake up from these dreams gasping, reaching for the bedside lamp, grounding myself in the reality that I'm safe, that I won, that the nightmare didn't come true. My therapist says these dreams may never fully go away, that they're my mind processing the trauma, and that's okay. They're a reminder of how close I came to losing everything, but also proof that I survived. Looking back, I can see so many moments where things could have gone differently, where if I'd made different choices, the outcome might have been catastrophic. If I hadn't installed the cameras, if I'd waited too long to act, if Officer Martinez had been less willing to look at the evidence, if David had been too defensive to see the truth. But all those things did happen, lined up in a way that feels almost miraculous. And I'm here now on the other side telling this story. That means something. I want people who hear this to understand that elder abuse isn't always obvious, isn't always physical violence or overt theft. Sometimes it's subtle, psychological, designed to make you doubt yourself while someone positions themselves to take advantage. And it can come from anywhere, from hired caregivers, or from family members, from people who seem loving and concerned on the surface while working behind the scenes to destroy you. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Maintain connections with people outside the situation who can offer perspective. and never be afraid to protect yourself, even if it means exposing ugly truths. The prosecutor told me after the case concluded that my documentation had been exemplary, that the security footage combined with my detailed notes about dates and incidents had made building the case straightforward. She said most elder abuse cases are much harder to prove because victims often don't have that kind of evidence. And by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late to establish a clear pattern. I was lucky in my paranoia, lucky that I listened to my gut and took action when I did. But luck shouldn't be required for justice, and that's why I share my story, hoping it might help someone else recognize the warning signs and act before it's too late. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. Please consider subscribing to help us reach that goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support helps these important stories reach more people who might need them. Just click that subscribe button. David and I are planning a trip together next spring, just the two of us, to Scotland, where Robert's family came from generations ago. It feels like a healing thing to do, a way to honor Robert's memory while marking our survival and recovery. We'll visit the places his grandparents talked about. We'll trace family history, and we'll create new memories that aren't shadowed by Cassandra's betrayal. I'm looking forward to it in a way I haven't looked forward to much since Robert died, with hope and excitement rather than dread. The senior center where I volunteer has started referring to me as the digital detective, a nickname I pretend to roll my eyes at but secretly love. I've helped 3 other people set up security systems in their homes after they shared concerns about family members or caregivers. I've taught dozens of people how to protect their online accounts and monitor their credit for suspicious activity. I've become an advocate for awareness and prevention, turning my trauma into purpose, and it feels good to help others avoid what I went through. I bought myself a new car last month, something I'd been putting off because it felt frivolous or unnecessary. But Robert always said life was for living, not just surviving, and I decided he was right. It's a modest sedan, nothing fancy, but it's reliable, and it's mine. And every time I drive it, I feel a little spark of independence and joy. Cassandra didn't win, didn't take my resources, or my autonomy, and this car is a symbol of that victory, a rolling middle finger to anyone who thought they could reduce me to a helpless victim. My lawyer has started referring other clients to me, people who are dealing with similar situations of family exploitation or abuse. I'm not a lawyer myself, can't give legal advice, but I can share my experience, can offer emotional support, can show them they're not alone, and that fighting back is possible. It's become an unexpected second chapter in my life, this advocacy work. And while I wish the circumstances that led to it had been different, I'm grateful for the purpose it's given me. The house that Cassandra tried so hard to take from me has become more mine than ever. I've redecorated Robert's study, not erasing him, but making the space work for me as a home office, where I prepare materials for my classes and manage my advocacy work. I've upgraded the kitchen, nothing major but enough to make cooking enjoyable again. I've planted a memorial garden in the backyard for Robert, flowers he loved, a bench where I can sit and talk to him, a space that feels sacred and peaceful. This is my home, earned through decades of work and love, and no one will ever make me feel like I don't belong here. Thank you so much for being here and listening to my story. If it's moved you, if you've found value in it, please click that subscribe button and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support makes all the difference in sharing these stories with people who need them. I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting or pretending bad things didn't happen. It's about integrating those experiences, learning from them, using them to become stronger and wiser and more compassionate. What Cassandra did to me was terrible, but it taught me things about myself I might never have discovered otherwise. It showed me I'm stronger than I thought, more resilient, more capable of fighting for myself when necessary. Those are gifts wrapped in trauma, and I'm learning to hold both truths simultaneously. David tells me sometimes that he's proud of me, which always makes me laugh because I'm his mother, and it should be the other way around. But I understand what he means. He's proud that I fought back, that I didn't let Cassandra win. that I protected both of us even when it meant exposing painful truths. And I'm proud of him too, for having the courage to believe evidence that shattered his marriage, for choosing truth over comfortable lies, for standing with me when it would have been easier to retreat into denial. We've both grown through this nightmare, and our relationship is stronger now than it was before Cassandra entered our lives. I've started writing everything down, not just for legal purposes, but as a kind of therapy, a way of processing what happened and making sense of the senseless. This account you're hearing now is part of that process, putting words to experiences that felt overwhelming when I was living through them. There's power in naming things, in claiming your own narrative, instead of letting others define your story. Cassandra tried to write me as the confused old woman losing her grip on reality, but I'm rewriting that story as the survivor who trusted herself enough to seek proof and fight back. The support group I attend has become like a second family, people who understand without needing lengthy explanations, who celebrate victories and mourn setbacks with genuine empathy. We've created a resource guide together, compiling information about legal protections, financial safeguards, warning signs of exploitation, and local services available to help. We distribute it through senior centers and community organizations, hoping to reach people before they become victims. It's grassroots activism, born from shared pain, and it's making a real difference in our community. I've had to make peace with the fact that some people in my social circle believed Cassandra's narrative about me, at least initially. A few neighbors, some acquaintances from church, even a distant cousin who I'd thought knew me better than that. When the truth came out, some apologized and some just quietly pretended they'd never doubted me. I've had to decide who gets a second chance and who showed their true colors in a way I can't overlook. It's been painful but clarifying, understanding that crisis reveals character, both others and your own. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're working toward that first 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Just click that red button and you're part of this community. The financial cost of everything Cassandra put me through has been significant. Legal fees, security system installation, therapy costs, the ongoing expense of being more careful and protected. But it's money well spent, because the alternative would have been losing everything. Robert's life insurance, our home, my autonomy, possibly even my life if the medication tampering had gone differently. When I frame it that way, every dollar spent on protection and justice feels like the best investment I've ever made. I've developed a morning routine that helps ground me and remind me I'm safe. I check the security camera footage from overnight, not because I expect to find anything, but because the act of checking and finding nothing wrong reinforces that I'm protected. I make coffee in the kitchen that's mine, sit in the garden Robert and I planned together, and I consciously appreciate the peace and security I fought so hard to maintain. It's a form of gratitude practice, acknowledging daily that I didn't lose what Cassandra tried to take. David has asked if I'd ever consider dating again, finding companionship now that I'm learning to rebuild my life. The question surprises me every time, because I still think of myself as Robert's wife, even though he's been gone almost 2 years now. But I'm starting to understand that honoring his memory doesn't require being alone for the rest of my life, that he'd want me to be happy and connected, not isolated in grief and caution. I'm not ready yet. Maybe won't ever be. But I'm open to the possibility in a way I wasn't before, and that feels like progress. The restraining order means I don't have to worry about running into Cassandra accidentally, at least not legally. She's required to stay 500 feet away from me, from my home, from places she knows I frequent. It's a buffer zone that lets me move through the world without constantly looking over my shoulder. But I'm realistic enough to know that restraining orders are paper barriers, effective only if the person chooses to respect them. So I stay vigilant while trying not to let vigilance become paranoia. I've thought about writing a book about my experience, expanding this narrative into something that could reach even more people. My lawyer thinks it's a good idea, that there's a real need for first-hand accounts of elder abuse and recovery. My therapist supports it as potentially therapeutic, a way of taking full ownership of my story. David is supportive but worried about privacy, about how detailed I might get about his marriage and divorce. I'm still considering it, weighing the potential good against the personal cost of sharing everything so publicly. The security camera company that installed my system has asked if they can use my story, anonymized, in their training materials for installers. They want their technicians to understand that sometimes cameras are about more than deterring burglars, that they can be lifelines for vulnerable people dealing with hidden abuse. I agreed immediately, because if my experience can help others recognize when something's wrong and take action, then something positive comes from the pain Cassandra caused. Your subscription means we can keep sharing these stories and building a community that believes in truth and justice. Please click subscribe and help us reach that goal of 1,000 subscribers. We're so close now, and every subscription matters. I've started attending a grief support group specifically for widows and widowers, separate from the elder abuse group, because I realized that losing Robert and dealing with Cassandra's betrayal had become tangled together in my healing process. I needed to create space to mourn my husband, without that grief being contaminated by anger at what came after. The group has helped me separate those experiences, to honor my love for Robert, while also processing the trauma of nearly losing everything he left behind. The day Cassandra's probation ends is marked on my calendar, not because I expect her to immediately violate the restraining order, but because I want to be prepared for the possibility. My lawyer has already drafted the paperwork for a permanent protective order. We just need any evidence of contact or threat to file it. I hope we never need it. Hope Cassandra has moved on with her life and learned something from facing consequences. But hope isn't a security plan, so I'm ready either way. I've become something of a local expert on elder financial abuse, giving talks at libraries and community centers about protecting yourself from exploitation. I share statistics that shock people, how common this crime is, how often the perpetrators are family members or trusted caregivers, how rarely it's reported or prosecuted. Then I share my story, and I watch people's faces change as they realize this could happen to anyone. The vulnerability isn't weakness, and being targeted isn't failure. The conversations after these talks are always intense, people sharing their own concerns or experiences, and I feel honored to create space for those discussions. David's therapist has suggested we do some sessions together, working on our relationship and processing the trauma Cassandra caused to both of us. I agreed, because I want David to heal, want us to rebuild on solid ground, and if professional help can facilitate that, then I'm all for it. We've had 2 joint sessions so far, and they've been emotionally exhausting, but valuable, creating space to talk about things we've been dancing around, acknowledging pain we've both been carrying. It's hard work, but necessary work, and I'm grateful David initiated it. The medication tampering charge was what really got people's attention in the legal system, what elevated this from a property crime to something much more serious. The pharmacist who testified about the potential interactions and dangers if I'd taken the wrong pills at the wrong times was compelling and terrifying. The judge said during sentencing that Cassandra's actions showed a callous disregard for human life and safety, and while that validated my experience, it also chilled me to realize how close I came to serious harm or death. I've reconnected with Robert's sister, my sister-in-law Marie, who I drifted away from during the worst of everything with Cassandra. Marie was furious when she learned what had happened. Furious at Cassandra, but also at herself for not recognizing something was wrong. She's become one of my strongest supporters now, calling regularly, visiting when she can, helping me stay connected to Robert's family and memory. That relationship being restored has been healing in unexpected ways. If this story has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to support this channel. We're building something meaningful here, a community that shares important stories, and we're working toward that first 1,000 subscribers. Your click makes a real difference. The house feels fuller now even though I live here alone. I've started hosting Sunday dinners again, inviting David and sometimes Marie and a few close friends. We cook together. We laugh. We tell stories about Robert. And we're creating new traditions that honor the past while moving forward. Cassandra tried to take this from me, the warmth and connection of family gathered around a table. But she failed. These dinners are my victory, proof that community and love are stronger than manipulation and greed. I've learned to recognize the difference between healthy concern and controlling behavior disguised as care. Real concern respects autonomy, offers support without strings, accepts your decisions even when disagreeing with them. Cassandra's version of concern was always about control, about positioning herself to make decisions for me, about undermining my confidence in my own judgment. That distinction seems obvious now, but was invisible when I was living through it, and I share it with everyone I meet who might be in similar situations. The police department invited me to speak at a training session for officers responding to elder abuse calls. I talked about what Officer Martinez did right, how he listened, how he looked at my evidence with an open mind, how he gave me agency in deciding whether to press charges. I also talked about how easily it could have gone differently if he dismissed me as confused or overly emotional, if he'd accepted Cassandra's narrative without investigating. The officers asked thoughtful questions, and several thanked me afterward, saying they'd approach these calls differently now, and that felt like meaningful change being created from my pain. I bought Robert's favorite flowers yesterday and put them throughout the house, just because I could, because this is my home, and I can fill it with beauty and memory and life. Cassandra wanted this house empty, wanted me gone so she could sell it and take the money. Instead, it's full of flowers and photographs and the sound of my voice teaching online classes and the smell of Sunday dinners cooking. Every day I live here fully is another day she didn't win. David told me recently that he's stopped feeling guilty for missing the signs of Cassandra's true nature. His therapist has helped him understand that manipulators are skilled at deception, that missing red flags doesn't make him stupid or complicit, that he was a victim too, even if in different ways. I'm glad he's reaching that point because watching him torture himself with should-haves and could-haves has been painful. We were both deceived by someone we trusted, and there's no shame in that, only lessons to carry forward. The anniversary of the day Officer Martinez came to my door is approaching, and I'm planning to mark it somehow. Not as a celebration, but as an acknowledgement of a turning point. That was the day the tide turned, when I stopped being on the defensive and started fighting back with proof that couldn't be denied. I'm thinking of hosting a gathering for everyone who supported me through the legal process. My lawyer, Officer Martinez if he's available, friends who stood by me, maybe some members of my support group. A recognition that justice, when it happens, is a collective effort. Please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps us share these important stories and build toward that goal of 1,000 subscribers. We're creating something meaningful together, one story, one subscription, one act of solidarity at a time. I've started a small scholarship fund at the local community college for students studying gerontology, social work, or criminal justice, fields where understanding elder abuse is crucial. It's funded with money Robert left me, money Cassandra tried to take, and now it's helping train the next generation of professionals who might protect people like me. Robert would love that his life insurance is being used this way, creating good from what could have been tragedy. The nightmares are less frequent now, maybe once or twice a month instead of nightly. My therapist says that's normal, that trauma responses fade but may never completely disappear, and I've made peace with that. The dreams remind me to stay vigilant but not paranoid, to trust but verify, to protect myself while still engaging with life. They're uncomfortable teachers, but teachers nonetheless. David brought his new girlfriend Sarah to meet me last week. A carefully planned introduction at a neutral location, a coffee shop where I'd feel comfortable and could leave if needed. She was lovely, genuine and kind, with clear boundaries and a respect for David's relationship with me that felt healthy rather than threatened. I'm cautiously optimistic, watching and hoping, wanting David to find happiness while also protecting us both from being fooled again. It's a difficult balance, but necessary. I've learned that recovery isn't a destination, but an ongoing practice. Some days I feel completely healed, strong and confident, and past all of this. Other days something small triggers me. A car that looks like Cassandra's parked on my street, a stranger who walks like her, and I'm back in that place of fear and vulnerability. But the good days outnumber the bad days now, and even the bad days don't completely undo my progress. That's growth. That's healing. That's winning. The security footage is time-stamped and dated, irrefutable evidence that tells the truth no matter how many times Cassandra tried to rewrite history. In court, her lawyer attempted to suggest I'd misinterpreted innocent actions, that she was just trying to help, that her concern for me was genuine. Then the prosecutor played the video of her deliberately mixing my medications, and the courtroom went silent. You can't misinterpret that, can't explain it away, can't claim good intentions when you're clearly causing harm. Truth won that day, documented truth that couldn't be denied. I've thought about what I'd say to Cassandra if I ever saw her again, what words I'd choose to express the damage she caused. But increasingly, I realize that my silence, my complete absence from her life, is the most powerful statement I can make. She doesn't get my anger, doesn't get my pain, doesn't get any more of my energy or attention. She's erased, and that erasure is her punishment beyond what the court imposed. If you found value in this story, please subscribe to the channel and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them, creating awareness and community around important issues. Just one click on that subscribe button. The strongest moment in my recovery came about 6 months after everything concluded, when I realized an entire day had passed without thinking about Cassandra once. I'd been busy with volunteering, had lunch with friends, worked in my garden, talked to David on the phone, and not once did she cross my mind. That's when I knew I was truly reclaiming my life, that she was becoming history rather than present reality. The days like that are more frequent now, whole stretches where I'm just living rather than recovering. My lawyer framed one of the security camera images, the timestamp showing the date and time of Cassandra's most damning entry into my house, and gave it to me as a gift when the case closed. It sits in my office, not where I see it daily, but where I can look at it when I need to remind myself that I trusted my instincts, that I took action, that I saved myself. It's an odd memento, but a powerful one. I've become an advocate for mandatory reporting laws for financial professionals who suspect elder abuse, testifying before the state legislature about why banks and financial advisors need clearer guidelines about when to report suspicious activity. It's nerve-wracking speaking in those formal settings, but my story carries weight because it's real and documented and nearly ended in disaster. If my testimony helps pass laws that protect others, then every moment of fear and violation wasn't entirely wasted. David and I took a weekend trip together last month, just a short drive to the coast. Nothing elaborate. But it was the first time we'd traveled together since before he married Cassandra. We walked on the beach, ate fresh seafood, talked about everything and nothing, and I felt something ease in my chest that had been tight for years. We're finding our way back to the relationship we had before. Changed, but intact. Damaged, but healing. The support group celebrated with me when the restraining order was issued, understanding in a way most people couldn't how much safety that piece of paper represented. We've celebrated each other's victories. The abusive family member who finally moved away, the successful lawsuit, the protective order granted, the reconciliation with an estranged child. Our pains are different, but our resilience is shared, and that community has been essential to my healing. Please subscribe if you believe in the importance of sharing stories like this one. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers, creating a community that values truth and supports survivors. Your subscription is a vote of confidence in this work. I still check the obituaries sometimes, a habit I developed after Robert died, and I wonder what I'd feel if I saw Cassandra's name there someday. Relief maybe, or nothing at all. Or perhaps sadness for the waste of a life spent exploiting others, instead of building something real. I hope I never have to find out. Hope she lives a long life far away from me, hopefully learning to be better than she was. But I don't dwell on it. Don't give her space in my thoughts that should be occupied by people who matter. The prosecutor told me after the case that she wished more victims had the courage and evidence to press charges like I did, She said most elder abuse cases never make it to court because victims are afraid of family conflict, lack proof, or don't realize they have legal options. My case set a precedent in our county, establishing that these crimes would be taken seriously, investigated thoroughly, and prosecuted vigorously. That legacy feels important, bigger than just my personal vindication. I've learned to celebrate small victories, the days I feel safe, the moments I laugh without reservation, the Sunday dinners full of warmth, the new friendships I've built, the students I've helped protect themselves. These might seem trivial compared to the dramatic courtroom victory, but they're the substance of a life reclaimed, the daily proof that Cassandra failed to destroy me. Recovery is built on these small moments accumulating into a new normal. David asked me what I wanted for my next birthday, and I told him just his presence, just time together without the shadow of what we've been through. He's planning something, I can tell, and I'm learning to accept his care without suspicion, to trust that love offered now is genuine rather than manipulative. That trust is fragile, earned slowly, but it's growing, and that growth is its own kind of victory. Thank you for being here and listening to my story from beginning to end. If it's moved you, if you found meaning in it, please click subscribe and help us reach that goal of 1,000 subscribers. You're part of something important here, a community that believes in truth, in justice, in the power of sharing our stories, so others know they're not alone. Every subscription matters. Every person who joins this community adds their voice to something meaningful. We're almost there, and your support is what makes this work possible. Just click that red subscribe button and you're with us. Thank you, truly, for listening and for caring enough to be part of this journey. Together, we're creating space for stories that need to be told and heard, for truth that needs to be spoken, for survivors who deserve to know they're not alone. Subscribe now, and let's reach that 1,000 together.